Oh, girl, I'm just so happy to have you. So, hi, everybody. My name's Elaine. I am here, Captivate the Mic. I am here with the magnificent, fabulous Heather Zeitzwolf, who I'm so grateful. She's so busy running three different companies that she took time out of her busy schedule to be with us. Because, Heather, you are just such a delight. Okay, awesome. So now we're going to segue into New York stories. Because when I was on a trip with Heather, we were talking about being new in New York and some of the crazy things you do because it's such a crazy. I'm going to tell you mine first and then we'll tell you yours if that's
Yeah,
okay.
totally. Yeah.
So I'm new in New York City. I've been sober. I moved to New York City and got sober at the same time, and which was very challenging. It was God's plan, but oh my, they kept saying, don't change anything. And I had to keep moving. I had to keep temping. And so I ended up at this restaurant, and it was a really hot new restaurant in Midtown, and it was, I won't say the name, but it was an old movie theater that they had converted, and there was this huge Buddha. So it was like Buddha bar in Paris, and it was really cool and hip, and they had DJs on the weekend, which I didn't know till after I'd been trained. And because I was training for the marathon, I was getting up at 6 in the morning. So I was like, what do you mean DJs until 2? What? I thought this was a restaurant. Anyway, so they're like, oh, do you want to work the P. Diddy party? P. Diddy's going to have a party before MTV Awards. P. Diddy. And I was like, yes, this is going to be so exciting. All of these movie stars and music moguls, and I get to work it. And some people were like, no, I don't want to work that. And I was like, oh, why? I want to have this whole experience. It's going to be so cool. We get there early, everything's getting set up. There's fancy extra flowers everywhere. There's all this extra stuff. He would send his own people to zhuzh up a place that was already zhuzh. But anyway, so as the night goes on, it's getting more and more crowded, and it's got like a thuggy vibe a little bit. And there's most people. I would say by 10 o'clock at night, we're just drinking straight out of the champagne bottles, Veuve Clicquot, which is, it's not Dom Perignon, but it's not like Andrews. And there's all these people just walking around, and then all these security guys. I remember thinking, what? Why do they look so nervous? Like, why are they so nervous? Because I was just so naive. And it slowly dawned on me as the night wore on. Oh, people have guns. People are carrying guns. There are guns. They have guns. They have guns. Like, I was just like, why is this? Like, it was like this very slow because I'm like working. And then you realize, and it's dark. It's already like a dark place. And I swear the lights just seem to be getting darker and darker. And so there's like more and more like stuff getting thrown. And then they're like, don't go in that corner. Don't avoid that corner. And one of my friends was like, yeah, they're assaulting. Like, stuff is happening. Just don't even walk over there. Just stay in this corridor. And by this time, it's like midnight. And I'm thinking, oh, this was like the worst idea I've ever had. And then I'm seeing more and more thuggy things happening and more. And then P. Diddy got up on the stage and was like, turn down for what? And we're going to stay till everybody else has to go to work. And I remember just thinking, oh no. Anyway, and finally, like at 4 in the morning, they finally put the lights up and they politely asked everybody to leave. And I remember watching the security guys sweat. Like, they were so nervous that something was going to happen. And I remember just thinking, oh, this is the worst idea I've ever had. And then, so we finally got everybody to leave. I know that stuff went down in that corner, but there were no gunshots fired in this restaurant. And then we're like literally carrying tables through rivers of champagne on the floor at 6 in the morning. And I remember I have to find a different job. So I just remember to me, it was a great lesson of being super excited, but not thinking it all the way through and getting swept away in the excitement of it. And I'm telling this, obviously, P. Diddy's in the news a lot, but I'm telling this because as entrepreneurs, you have to get excited about what you're doing or you're not going to make it. And you get to be careful about what you get excited about. So I have learned, and I think Heather's done this too, take some time before you say yes to everything. Think it through. Yes, it's exciting to be invited to do cool things, but think it through because that could have gone way differently. And thank God it was okay. And then I ended up getting a better restaurant with not, I wasn't there until 4. Anyway, so that's one of my crazier New York stories. I just think it's so funny because I was like, this is going to be so much fun. And then a few hours later, I'm like, I'm actually scared for my life. So, so that's one of mine. But I know you have a great New York story, Heather.
Oh,
You have
okay.
so many,
Yeah,
so
so
many.
I'll just talk about places that I lived. And when you want to live in New York, you have to give up a lot. Like the convenience of living in a like a regular house or apartment, that is just like not a thing. And so you pretty much have to decide, will I suffer to get what I want? And is it worth it? And sometimes it wears you out and chews you up and spits you out. But I had the first time I lived in New York, I was 19 years old and I lived in Queens. And then I turned 20 after that. I left and then I came back. So the second time I was in New York, I was probably at that point 20, I think. And I was like, I'm going to live in Manhattan this time. I don't, none of this Queens business.
In the suburbs. I'm going to
Yeah.
be in the city.
Yeah. And I wanted
Just
to
put two
live in
extra
the
zeros.
village. It had to be in the East Village. I was like, I wanted to be a village person. And, but,
Because the East Village is so cool. It is so fun and funky. It is, that's where like famous CBGBs. It's just
it
like
was,
such a
yes, it
cool
was,
scene,
yeah,
right?
it was still, that was still a thing. Yeah. And so this was early 90s. So we're talking about probably like 91, 92, somewhere in there. And so it was still edgy. And Giuliani had not come through and cleaned it up. But to get to New York City, I had to first have some place to stay. My brother had a friend that was living in Astoria, which is in Queens. So I was back in Queens. I stayed in his house and I had a couple of suitcases and I needed to find a job. And I don't even know if he had a bed in the room that I was sleeping in, but he had ants. That's what he did have. And there was ants crawling all through my luggage. I just tons of ants.
Oh
But
no.
he did not have any a full-length mirror. Now I just like all I wanted to do was like go to nightclubs and discover the nightlife and all that. No mirrors. What? So I had to go to a local hardware store and I'm like dragging this mirror through the streets in New York up to this apartment so that I can see myself in this like cheap mirror, but still like I had a mirror. So with the ants and everything, and I was trying to find jobs and I would get like cheap Chinese food and eat that box of Chinese food would last me 3 days. And I didn't have much money. So I would just watch what was those soap operas, some the world as the world turns. Yeah, I was into
Right,
as
right,
the
right.
world turns. Right. So that would be like my highlight of the day. So finally, then I got a job and I'm like, I'm moving to Manhattan. So my first apartment, and I really wanted to be in the village, but I think I was on 15th Street, which the village
Ah,
really starts
just above.
on 14th Street. So I was like, one block. So I got this apartment where it was a studio apartment, except for there was somebody else living in it. And you walk in, there's like a kitchenette, there is like a stereo system, a fold out couch. Now, when I say a fold out couch, I don't mean like a fold out, like an actual sofa bed, one of those foam things that it wasn't even a couch, it was a chair that it was just like 4 pieces of foam that would hold up to be a chair. And then I unfold that, and that was my bed. And then a screen, which was like one of those, like maybe like a Japanese screens. And then his bed was on the other side. That was the whole place. So I was, and I had my mirror and I had my suitcases that had had some ants left in it. Maybe I tried to kill all the ants before I brought it into that place. So I lived there for several months. And luckily, the guy had a sick mom he was taken care of. Sorry for him, but Lisa gave me the apartment.
So he was away a lot.
Yeah, yeah. But it was a little weird. He's like on the side of this thing, and I'm just on this like piece of foam. Well, that piece of foam became like a through line through my stays in New York because getting a bed and moving a bed around is not a good thing. So
Oh,
then I was like, I gotta move. It turned out there was further down 15th Street near Gramercy Park, this woman was looking for a roommate. And I'm like, okay, I can drag my stuff down 15th Street, and that's a good move.
Gramercy Park is gorgeous,
Yeah.
right?
And just grab it and move it down. I thought maybe I could find a shopping cart. I never found a shopping cart. So I'd have to just drag it. Anyways, so she was this woman that she had this whole apartment. So she had this extra bedroom. And in the bedroom, you walk in and it's basically just like a room where the door opens. There's a window that looks into another apartment and straight into another apartment. Nothing covering the window and not even really much room between. I don't know, maybe a cat could crawl between the two spaces. And there was a desk and then there was a bed in a loft. This is the whole room. So you walk in and you're like under a desk, and then there's a ladder. You climb up, and this bed was so high up to the ceiling, like you could barely sit up. And there was a pipe that was like a lot of radiator stuff that happened in New York. This radiator pipe that went up right next to this bed. So I'm up high and a radiator pipe is there. And heat rises.
And it was those pipes get hot.
Yes, right. It was so freaking hot up in this bed. And then the only area I had below was this little desk area. And I got this, it was a velvet Elvis, like a postery thing to cover the window. So I just had my Elvis and it was like hot pink and velvet. So I'd look at Elvis when I was getting ready. But it was so unbelievably hot. So besides that, the woman had a ginormous dog that was giant, white, and furry. And the stipulation of living there was you had to walk the dog. And of course, you have to clean up their poop. And then there was other things that happened, like not just walking the dog. Now, mind you, I was very goth. I only wore black. This dog shed like crazy. So I was always covered in dog hair. There was old pipes.
So you always had black, but with little white hairs all over you.
And I had no money to get the sticky stuff to get it off. That would just seem like a waste of money when I could be buying drinks at the club or something.
Or food.
Yeah, or food. And the pipes were old, so forget about flushing down your tampons, so they'd have to go in the garbage can. This dog had an affinity for eating tampons. One time I brought a date home and there was bloody tampons everywhere on the floor.
Oh my God.
Yes. At that point, I was like, I think I got to move out. But there was also another stipulation. This woman was very much into hazelnut coffee that was from a particular place in the village. And so it was by Kiehl's, which was the facial place.
I love Kiehl's, right?
Yes. And so I'd have to go down there and get the special coffee, which I wasn't even that keen about, but that was part of the stipulation. That dog, so I was cleaning up the dog's poop. I had his hair all over me. I had the tampon thing. It was like so much.
And you had to get, this is a lot of rules.
Yeah. And she ate Kentucky Fried Chicken with her best friend every single day. I have never seen so much KFC in my life. Anyways, I was like, I got to get out of here. So then.
Wait, were you a vegan yet?
No.
Because that smell just permeates everywhere.
Yeah, it was every single day. It was like the same order. It was like mashed potatoes and gravy. I was like, who eats this much KFC? And you're in New York where you have all the culinary
most beautiful
choices
foods ever. Yes.
Yeah. So then I was like, I got to get out of here. So then I was like, I got to get in the village. I want to be like in Alphabet City or something. Yeah. So then I found an apartment that was right on Houston Street. It was like, and it was between B and C, or was it C and D? It was in there somewhere, but the backside of the building was on Houston Street. So right next to the Lower East Side. And I loved it. That place the location was great. My living situation, however, was a little bit on the weird side. Unlike the other one.
Can I just interrupt? So Soho, Soho, south of Houston. So Soho is where all the artsy, those big lofts were. Because as manufacturers were leaving New York City, that's where the artists and the poor people and the gay people would come in and trick it out. And there were some amazing lofts there. So that's where you were. That was the neighborhood.
So Soho was down the street from me.
Okay. But you were very close.
I was close.
Yeah.
But close isn't the same when in New York, like you can go It may have been a short walk, but so I
Okay,
was
so was it
overlooking the Lower East Side, which Clinton was one of the streets near me, but it was a lot of rundown apartments. In
right? And
fact,
this is the
here's some,
90s, so like
yeah,
very different than now, where
yeah.
things
Like
look
the first time I lived there, I had a boyfriend that lived in one of the buildings that was down there and off of Clinton, and he had a bathtub in his kitchen. So that kind of tells you what the quality of those apartments were in that area.
okay.
So this apartment that I moved into, the guy that had the apartment, he was this guy that loved Elvis. So here's this weird Elvis thing again. He had a pompadour. He would wear cut off hot pant like jeans. He'd roller skate everywhere. He was the doorman at the knitting factory, which was like down in that area. And he
Oh, very
loved
cool.
Elvis. There was like Elvis shampoo, like a shrine of it in the bathroom. And it was really funny. And he had this little like loft, I'm air quoting loft area, which was open. So it was really just an area where you'd go up there, there were stairs, and then you look down into the living room area. This upstairs area became my room, except for he had a baby grand piano in this area that was like this little lofty area. He and how he got that baby grand piano into that room is probably because there's a set of sliding glass doors in that area that went out to the roof of the building, which was a shared roof, which anybody in the building could come out and be on that roof looking straight into my loft area.
Did you
So
have curtains?
no, I couldn't afford that. So I had some like things that I draped over the wrought iron thing that separated me from the downstairs area, which was like, but it was still open, like totally open. So then I was like, well, where am I going to put my stuff? So I put the stuff on top of the grand piano. And then the area where I slept, I'd have to shimmy underneath the baby grand to an alcove that was literally like this little area that would jet out from the wall, and then right underneath would probably where normal people would put their shoes. Like it was like that kind of an area. And I had a piece of foam that went underneath there.
There we go with the foam
Yeah,
again.
yeah. And I literally had to like be horizontal to get into this area. And again, couldn't lift up my head. So even worse than the last place. Uh, I had just enough room. I went to the Wiz. I don't know if that's still in New York, but the Wiz, and I got a mini television that had a VCR built into it. So it was one of those little tiny things. So the alcove it was just high enough just to get that mini television in there. So that's about as high as it was. And so I would shimmy under there and then sleep in my little alcove like a vampire or something. And then I'd come out. And then there was like some other little alcovey shelf or something that I put my DVD player on. But it was a very weird situation. And the guy that had the apartment, like he had married this German woman to help her get a green card, and she rode the motorcycles in the sphere that was Ringling Brothers. They would travel around, and she was in one of those like round cages, and she'd ride the motorcycles around. And he was clearly gay and not really married to her, and then he took off and he was like renting all the spaces in the place. And then we found out from the landlord that he had been keeping the rent money that we'd been paying him, and he never paid the rent. So we got kicked out and I had to find another place.
And who else lived there?
There at that time there was about 3 or 4 other people living in that
Okay.
small space. Yeah.
And I'm just curious, in your little alcove, would people get up on the roof and be like peering in? Did you
Oh
have
yeah,
people?
like sometimes I'd be like in my little alcove and I could hear a party out there. I'm like, oh, what's going on out there? And sometimes I knew people. I'd be like, hey, oh my God.
Hey, this is my bedroom where I sleep.
Yeah. People would be like, you're in there. And it's New York, though. You never know. Man, when I was shopping around for a place, okay, so these are the good places I found. And you see a lot of weird living situations when you live.
I saw one apartment and I remember thinking this would make me want to start drinking immediately. And I can be pretty frugal, but it felt horrific. Yeah, I'm so glad. And so you saw some bad ones too.
Oh yeah. And then just funny things where it's like you go over to someone's house and they're like, you're in their situation. And okay, back then there's no internet. So this was all stuff that you would find in the Village Voice. So you'd have to pay money to call them. And so it's okay, you're already investing 50 cents to make a phone call into this, hoping they're going to answer the phone. And then you get this person, you're just walking into a situation that you have no idea. There was no social media. You couldn't look this person up, but you're going
Yeah.
finally in there. So I remember this one place that was like, just junk everywhere and stuff like moving. And I was like, oh, what is all this? I'm a kinetic artist. It's okay. It looks like you need like like an actual like art studio. Like he had kinetic art everywhere. It's just like stuff moving around. And
Oh my God. And that's one thing I auditioning, you're running around New York City and you would go up into these buildings. And I used to think this is such an adventure. And every once in a while, a casting director would be having a casting from their own apartment. And so they would have blocked off parts of it and you just saw so many fascinating apartments. And I got to go into a couple of really fancy places, but yeah, you just saw it all. But I love your stories, Heather.
I did stage managing for like a modern dance show, and we were rehearsing in this space in Chinatown. It was so cool. It was like just straight out of a movie, like a loft apartment, and it was a dance studio where this woman like lived above, and she lived in this like loft space, but it had light and everything. But every time someone wanted to come in, we'd have to throw the keys down out of the window. Let's ride one of the creepy elevator with the thing that went across. It's like straight out of Single White Female or something, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I knew this other woman who had this beautiful loft and she'd had it since the 70s. So the rent was just, it's amazing if you get there at the right time. So, okay, I love all this. And Heather, what do you think? How do we relate this back to a business lesson for our entrepreneurs? What is because I have things I want to say, but what would you say?
Sometimes you're just going to have to roll up your sleeves and just deal with the situation at hand and be scrappy about it, because if you're starting a business, you may not have all the funds to do all the things that you want to do. So you have to find solutions that are low cost, that work, and kind of test things out. Is this what I want? Is this not what I want? That sort of thing. And as I'm leaning in towards trying to figure out like a new business venture for myself, I'm out there rolling up my sleeves again, trying different things, not spending too much money on it, and testing it out. And then, oh, maybe that's not right. Try something else and move on.
I love that. I love that. And I think what I'm hearing in all of our stories is a willingness, curiosity, willing to be uncomfortable again and again. And I know for me, a lot of my suffering, hindsight's always 2020, right? So much of my suffering was because I was attached to the results. I wanted the results. And so I really, again and again, I get the lesson of when I do my spiritual practices, I am more open to having experiences, and miracles can happen in that space. Possibilities can happen in that space instead of, but this is what I want. So it's like learning to be intentional and then letting go, and then taking the action, but then letting go. Because that's one thing that I learned a lot in New York. And in hindsight, I wish I'd had the space that you have and Will Ferrell has. It's not too late. I still will always be pursuing comedy and acting because I love it, even if I'm not totally focused on it now. But thank you so much for your fabulous stories, Heather. And you've had such an interesting career, and I love what you do.
I have another short story.
Okay, tell me.
Okay, because yours reminded me of. Okay, so I was working in fashion design, and then I got laid off, and I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? And I've always had a curiosity about nightclub culture. And I found out about a nightclub that was opening. Turned out it was a gentleman's club, and a quote unquote gentleman's club. And here I am, only like a total goth chick. And it turns out our uniform, I was going to be a waitress there. I never had waited tables there before.
Oh,
we
no.
had to wear white lace. It was called Solid Gold. And they put us through training. Turns out it was owned by some high up mob families didn't know that. They never really got they bought the business from another like strip club or whatever, and they never really got their liquor license. So one day we show up and there's locks on the doors and all of that. But I did have some very fun experiences while it was around. Anthony Michael Hall would always come in on Sundays, and Sundays were slow. So I like to work on Sundays because sometimes I was the only waitress there on Sundays. And then David Lee Roth was always like closing the place. Like he would like till 4 o'clock in the morning. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, we all had to like line up in our stupid lace outfits and with our tray out, and the drunk people would come out and tip us or whatever. But it was very funny because all what I found out was like the dancers, like they had to work it, like they had to sell themselves. And because guys want to buy them drinks, and that's you're pushing drinks. And they didn't want to get drunk or something, so they'd have to dispose of the drinks. So you'd have to bring them drinks. So we had the champagne area, and we'd be like putting champagne into the planters and like all kinds of craziness like that. And then they had to buy golden dollars or something. And so like oftentimes at the end of the night, you'd find golden dollars. And I found so much money like left in different places. And but until the place was closed down. But so you never know when you pivot to try something else. You just never know what the world may send you. It may be a gentleman's club, and which was very fun, but nothing I would ever want to do again. But I got some good stories from it.
You did. You definitely did. And if people want to know more about how to find you and come to your events and stuff, where should they go, Heather?
Okay, they can find me on YouTube at Savvy Frugal Vegan, or you can go to my website, savvyfrugalvegan.com.
Awesome. And thank you so much. You're a great storyteller. You have great pitch. You have great vocal variety. You're captivating. I'm always on the edge of my seat. You tell it. You're in the moment and you're sharing it with us. You're not just talking it. And so even though some of these stories I've heard before, I was still on the edge of my seat. And that's a beautiful thing that we want to do as storytellers, is make it special every time. And it's okay if it comes out a little different. And you are just a magical, beautiful woman. And I'm so honored to have gotten to work with you. And thank you so much for sharing your genius and your art with us. And I hope that everybody got a lot out of this. I know I have had a blast today. So thanks so much, everybody. See you on the screen or the stage. Bye.